chosen one. Something shifted in the universe the moment you stepped into your true power. The air itself seemed to vibrate with a different frequency. What you thought was just another ordinary day became the beginning of the most extraordinary revelation of your life. You always knew you were different, not in the way people casually claim uniqueness, but in the bone-deep certainty that your presence in this world carries weight. Your energy moves through spaces like light, cutting through darkness. People feel it when you walk into a room. Some are drawn to it like moths to flame. Others recoil from its intensity. Your dreams had been trying to warn you for months. Vivid nightmares of being watched, hunted, pursued by shadows that felt more real than the waking world. You would wake with your heart pounding, sensing a presence that lingered even after consciousness returned. These weren't just dreams. They were spiritual downloads preparing you for what was coming. Synchronicities began appearing everywhere, numbers that followed you throughout the day, songs on the radio that spoke directly to your situation, conversations overheard in public that seemed meant for your ears. The universe was speaking, and you were finally learning to listen. Your meditation practice deepened during this time. What started as stress relief became profound spiritual communion. You found yourself receiving guidance that you couldn't explain rationally, but knew with absolute certainty was true. Messages about protection, warnings about deception, promises that justice would prevail. One particular person couldn't stay away. They orbited your life like a predator studying prey, convinced they could manipulate your light for their own dark purposes. What they didn't understand was that you weren't just carrying light. You were carrying divine justice itself. Your intuitive gifts were sharpening daily. You could feel people's intentions before they spoke. You could sense lies hanging in the air like smoke. You could perceive the emotional signatures that people left behind in spaces they had occupied. This heightened awareness wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. Prayer became your anchor during this turbulent time. Not the rote recitation of memorized words, but deep communion with forces beyond the physical realm. You found yourself praying for people you didn't even know were connected to your situation. Your spirit was interceding for a battle you couldn't yet see clearly. This story begins where their story ends, in the wreckage of their own making. For years you sensed something wasn't right. The feeling lived in your gut like a constant low-grade fever. Someone was watching. Someone was plotting. Someone was working in the shadows to unravel everything beautiful in your life. You tried to ignore it. You told yourself you were being paranoid. But your intuition doesn't lie. It never has. When you're connected to something higher, when divine protection flows through your veins, you feel the disturbances in the spiritual atmosphere. This person wore their mask so perfectly. They smiled at the right moments. They offered help when it seemed most needed. They positioned themselves as your ally, your confidant, your friend. But behind that carefully constructed facade lived something else entirely. A student of destruction, a collector of secrets, a manipulator who had turned the art of deception into their personal religion. They studied you like a doctoral thesis. Every conversation was research. Every shared moment was data collection. Every vulnerability you revealed became ammunition in their arsenal. They learned your patterns, your weaknesses, your fears, and your dreams, not to love you better, but to destroy you more efficiently. The warning signs were there if you knew how to read them. They asked too many questions about your personal life, while revealing nothing genuine about themselves. They remembered details about conversations you barely recalled, yet somehow forgot important commitments they made to you. They had an uncanny ability to show up wherever you were, claiming it was coincidence. Their compliments felt hollow, like they were reading from a script. Their sympathy seemed performative, lasting only as long as witnesses were present. When you needed real support, they were mysteriously unavailable, but when drama erupted, they appeared instantly, ready to document every moment of chaos. They cultivated an image of being everyone's trusted confidant. People confided in them because they seemed so understanding, so non-judgmental. What those people didn't realize was that every secret shared became currency in their manipulation economy. Information was power. and they were building an empire of other people's vulnerabilities. You began to notice how conversations shifted when they entered the room, how conflicts seemed to escalate in their presence, how misunderstandings multiplied whenever they offered to help resolve them. They weren't bringing people together. They were orchestrating division while positioning themselves as the peacemaker. Their questions weren't innocent curiosity. They were fishing expeditions designed to map your emotional triggers and identify your support systems. They wanted to know who you trusted most, so they could work to undermine those relationships. They wanted to understand your fears so they could weaponize them against you. What they failed to understand was that you weren't just another target. You were the wrong person to cross. Their obsession grew beyond reason. What started as simple manipulation evolved into something far more sinister. They couldn't just defeat you in the normal ways. They had to study advanced techniques, dark arts, psychological warfare tactics that would make seasoned manipulators blush. They connected with others who shared their appetite for destruction, a network of individuals who traded secrets like currency and treated human suffering like entertainment. They learned how to forge documents, how to create false narratives, how to manipulate social situations so thoroughly that truth became indistinguishable from fiction. If this message hits your spirit, hype this video so more chosen ones like you can find it. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Their research became an addiction. They consumed information about psychological manipulation like a starving person devours food. Forums dedicated to the narcissistic supply, websites teaching emotional vampirism, books on mind control disguised as self-improvement. They thought they had discovered secret knowledge that would make them untouchable, ancient techniques wrapped in modern terminology. They believed they were becoming a master of human nature itself. But obsession has a way of consuming the obsessed. The more they learned about manipulation, the more manipulated they became by their own dark impulses. The techniques they studied to use against others began rewiring their own psyche. They started losing track of who they really were beneath all the masks and strategies. Their personality fragmented into multiple personas, each designed for different targets: the loving partner, the loyal friend, the helpful colleague, the wounded victim. They had become a shapeshifter who no longer remembered their original form. Meanwhile, you continued living your authentic life. Your consistency became their kryptonite. While they juggled multiple false identities, your singular truth remained unshakable. This drove them to even greater extremes. They thought they were becoming powerful. In reality, they were digging their own grave. Every spell they cast came back threefold. Every lie they spread created more evidence against them. Every move they made in the shadows left digital footprints that would later become their undoing. They were so focused on destroying you that they never noticed they were destroying themselves. The universe has a way of protecting its chosen ones. Divine justice doesn't always arrive when we expect it, but it always arrives exactly when it's needed. You started noticing the glitches in their performance, small inconsistencies in their stories, moments when their mask slipped just enough to reveal the darkness underneath. Your heightened awareness picked up on energy shifts that others missed completely. The first crack appeared during a casual conversation. They mentioned an event that supposedly happened on a particular day, but you remembered them saying it was different just weeks before. When you gently questioned it, their response was too rehearsed, too defensive, like they had prepared for this exact scenario. Your intuitive gifts were working overtime. Every interaction felt like solving a puzzle where pieces kept changing shape, but you weren't going crazy. You were getting closer to something they desperately wanted to keep hidden. They started making mistakes because maintaining multiple false narratives is exhausting work. The mental energy required to keep track of every lie told to every person eventually overwhelms even the most skilled manipulator. They began confusing which version of events they had told to whom. Then came the breakthrough moment. Someone else in their circle started asking questions. Not about you, but about them. The very people they thought they had convinced began comparing notes, sharing experiences, piecing together a pattern that painted a very different picture than the one this person had been selling. A mutual friend mentioned something that didn't align with what you had been told. Another person shared a story that contradicted their established timeline. Someone else revealed they had been asked to keep secrets about situations that supposedly never happened. The facade that took years to construct began crumbling in a matter of days. People realized they had been manipulated, used, lied to on a scale that defied belief. The person they thought they knew was revealed as a master manipulator who had been playing everyone against each other for their own twisted entertainment. But you were never the victim in this story. You were the catalyst for their exposure. When the full scope of their deception came to light, even their closest allies stepped back in horror. This wasn't just simple lying or basic manipulation. This was systematic, calculated psychological warfare conducted against multiple people over extended periods. They had been living multiple lives, telling different stories to different people, creating conflicts where none existed, manufacturing drama to keep everyone off balance and too distracted to see what was really happening. The evidence was overwhelming. Screenshots of conversations where they contradicted themselves, recorded calls that revealed their true intentions, documents that proved premeditation, a paper trail of deception that stretched back further than anyone had imagined. Their computer history told a story that chilled everyone who saw it. Searches for how to manipulate someone into doubting their memory, and psychological techniques to isolate someone from friends, downloaded guides on emotional abuse tactics, bookmarked articles about gaslighting strategies. They had been taking notes on everyone around them, detailed profiles of psychological weaknesses and triggers, relationship maps showing how to turn people against each other, strategic plans for destroying reputations and isolating targets. But the most disturbing discovery was their research into you specifically. Folders filled with screenshots of your social media posts going back years, analysis of your communication patterns, attempts to map your daily routines and identify your support network. They had been studying you like a science experiment, documenting your reactions to different stimuli, testing various manipulation techniques to see which ones affected you most, treating your pain like data points in their twisted research. The depth of their obsession became clear when investigators found backup drives containing thousands of files related to their surveillance activities. Photos taken without permission, recorded conversations from public spaces, detailed timelines of your activities spanning months. Their own words became their condemnation. Every lie they told was documented in their private communications with accomplices. Every manipulation they attempted was outlined in their planning documents. Every secret they thought they had buried came rushing to the surface like a dam bursting. Private messages revealed their true thoughts about the people they pretended to care about. Mocking conversations about their victims' vulnerability. Celebration of successful manipulations. Plans for escalating their psychological warfare. The people they had manipulated weren't just angry. They were frightened. Frightened by the level of calculated cruelty this person was capable of. Frightened by how long they had been fooled. Frightened by what else this person might be hiding. Justice arrived not as a single dramatic moment, but as a series of consequences that built upon each other like an avalanche. Each revelation triggered new investigations. Each exposed lie led to the discovery of deeper deceptions. Their reputation crumbled overnight. People who had defended them publicly began distancing themselves. Professional relationships dissolved. Personal connections severed. The social network they had spent years building collapsed like a house of cards. The first wave came from their immediate circle. Friends who discovered they had been lied to about basic facts began questioning everything else. Family members realized that years of family drama had been artificially manufactured to keep everyone fighting while this person played puppet master from the shadows. Colleagues at work started connecting dots they had previously missed. Projects that had failed mysteriously. Team conflicts that seemed to erupt from nowhere. Credit claimed for others' work. Subtle sabotage disguised as helpfulness. The pattern became undeniable once people knew what to look for. But the real reckoning came from within their own inner circle. The people closest to them realized they had been the most thoroughly manipulated of all. The betrayal cut so deep that forgiveness wasn't even a consideration. Someone who had loved this person, trusted them completely, opened their life to them without reservation, discovered they had been nothing more than a source of supply, a chess piece in a game they didn't even know was being played. Every intimate moment had been calculated, every shared secret had been catalogued for future use, every expression of vulnerability had been seen as an opportunity for exploitation. The depth of the betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just lying about small things, this was systematic deception about fundamental aspects of identity, history, and intention. They had been living with a complete stranger who had been wearing the mask of someone who cared about them. Personal belongings went missing and reappeared in strange places. Private conversations were somehow known to people who shouldn't have access to that information. Financial irregularities that had been explained away with convincing stories suddenly looked like deliberate theft. That person's rage was biblical in its intensity. Years of manipulation condensed into pure fury. They wanted more than just distance from this predator. They wanted consequences. They wanted justice. They wanted everyone to know exactly what kind of monster had been walking among them. The ripple effect spread beyond their personal relationships. Professional networks began comparing notes. Industry connections shared warnings. What started as whispered concerns became public accountability measures, designed to protect others from similar exploitation. Now the hunter became the hunted. The person who had spent so much time orchestrating everyone else's destruction found themselves completely alone. Every door they knocked on was slammed shut. Every person they reached out to had already heard the truth. Their panic was visible to anyone who looked closely. The confident manipulator had been replaced by someone frantically trying to control damage that was spreading faster than they could contain it. They called old friends, distant relatives, former colleagues, anyone who might offer them sanctuary, or at least believe their version of events. But news travels fast in interconnected communities. Their reputation preceded them wherever they went. People who hadn't spoken to them in years suddenly received calls asking for help, only to decline after a quick internet search revealed the full scope of the scandal. They tried to find safe spaces, people who hadn't been exposed to the evidence yet, communities where they could start fresh with a clean slate, but their reputation preceded them now. The story of their deception spread faster than they could run from it. Social media became their enemy. Every platform where they once held influence turned hostile. Comment sections filled with testimonials from people they had manipulated. Screenshots of their lies circulated widely. Former victims found each other and shared their experiences publicly. They attempted to create new online identities, but their communication patterns were too distinctive. Their particular brand of manipulation had become recognizable to those who had experienced it. Within days, maybe hours, their new personas were exposed as the same person trying to rebrand their toxicity. They discovered that when you make a career out of burning bridges, you eventually find yourself stranded on an island of your own making. Professional opportunities vanished overnight. Personal relationships crumbled under the weight of revealed deceptions. Even family members began questioning everything they thought they knew about this person. Trontabenches, the luxury they thought they had secured through manipulation evaporated. The power they believed they had accumulated turned out to be an illusion. The respect they thought they had earned was revealed as fear-based compliance. They were left with nothing but the hollow shell of the person they had pretended to be. Throughout their campaign of destruction, they never understood what they were really up against. You weren't just another person they could manipulate and discard. You carried something they couldn't touch, couldn't corrupt, couldn't destroy, no matter how sophisticated their methods became. Divine protection isn't just a pretty concept. It's a living force that surrounds certain people like an impenetrable shield. When someone with malicious intent tries to harm someone under divine protection, the universe itself rises up in defense. The signs of your protection were everywhere, once you learned to recognize them. Accidents that should have been catastrophic but left you unharmed. Lies told about you that were immediately exposed before they could take root. Schemes plotted against you that backfired on their architects with stunning precision. Their attacks weren't just failing, they were reversing course and striking back at the source with amplified force. Every curse they attempted to place returned to them multiplied. Every trap they set for you caught them instead. Every weapon they forged cut their own hands when they tried to wield it. You began documenting these incidents when they became too numerous to dismiss as coincidence. Phone calls that mysteriously dropped when someone was spreading lies about you. Computer crashes that wiped out malicious communications before they could be sent. Travel delays that prevented harmful meetings from taking place. Even their allies began experiencing unexplained misfortune when they participated in schemes against you. Equipment failures during crucial moments, memory lapses that disrupted their coordination, health issues that forced them to withdraw from planned attacks. The universe was making it increasingly difficult for anyone to act against your best interests. Weather patterns seemed to shift around significant events in this spiritual warfare. Storms that disrupted their gatherings. Sunshine that illuminated truth when darkness was intended. Lightning that struck with symbolic precision. The natural world was taking sides in this battle between light and shadow. Your protection extended beyond the physical realm into the digital sphere. Social media attacks against you would glitch and disappear. Fake profiles created to harass you would be automatically suspended. Malicious websites designed to spread lies about you would crash repeatedly. The internet itself seemed to be defending your reputation. You didn't have to fight back. You didn't have to plot revenge. You didn't have to expose them yourself. The truth has a way of surfacing on its own when divine justice is involved. Financial attacks against you resulted in unexpected windfalls from other sources. Professional sabotage led to better opportunities appearing elsewhere. Relationship manipulation cleared away toxic connections to make room for genuine relationships. Every loss was transformed into a gain. Your role was simply to remain authentic, to stay connected to your higher purpose, to trust that the protection surrounding you was stronger than any force that could be marshaled against you. The complete scope of their deception finally came to light when law enforcement got involved. What started as interpersonal drama escalated into criminal investigation when the evidence revealed potential fraud, identity theft, and systematic harassment. Documents were subpoenaed, digital evidence was recovered, witnesses came forward. The web of lies they had constructed became a legal case study in manipulation and abuse. They had been so confident in their ability to control narratives that they never considered the possibility of facing real consequences. They thought they were untouchable, protected by their own cleverness and the loyalty of their victims. The investigation revealed financial crimes that nobody had suspected. Bank records showed unauthorized transactions, credit accounts opened in other people's names, insurance fraud involving fabricated claims, tax evasion through identity manipulation. What everyone thought was just emotional manipulation turned out to be part of a broader criminal enterprise. Their digital footprint told a story of premeditated criminal activity, encrypted communications with other fraudsters, purchase histories for identity theft tools, browser searches for how to avoid detection, and statute of limitations on financial crimes. They had been treating crime like a business venture. But divine justice doesn't recognize human hierarchies or social connections. It cuts through deception like lightning through darkness. Their attempts to explain away the evidence only made things worse. Every lie they told to cover previous lies created new contradictions. Every excuse they offered revealed deeper levels of premeditation. They claimed they were the real victim, but the evidence painted a picture of systematic predatory behavior. The Obsidian Inner Order is a sanctuary for those who have walked difficult paths and emerged with wisdom others can't see. We understand that some experiences exist outside the boundaries of what most people consider possible or acceptable to discuss. Every week we gather live on Zoom, real people with real faces sharing real stories without judgment. There's space here for the experiences you've carried in silence, the patterns you've noticed that others dismiss, the intuitive knowledge you've gained through your journey. We don't just listen, we understand. When you're struggling to make sense of your experiences, when you feel gaslit by a world that refuses to acknowledge your reality, you can return to our recorded calls and remember that your perception is valid. Join the Obsidian Inner Order, where your reality is honored and your voice is heard. Link in description. Ron Rate, Regal experts who reviewed the case were amazed by the scope of the deception. This wasn't just one person acting alone. They had been part of networks that specialized in targeting vulnerable individuals for financial and emotional exploitation. They had mentors who taught advanced manipulation techniques and apprentices they were grooming to carry on their methods. Court documents revealed their true financial situation. Despite living lavishly and claiming success, they were deeply in debt and facing bankruptcy. The luxury lifestyle had been funded entirely through theft, fraud, and manipulation. Every expensive item they owned had been purchased with someone else's money or credit. The person who had made a career out of making others look crazy was now the one who appeared completely unhinged. Their courtroom behavior became erratic as the walls closed in. They fired multiple attorneys. They changed their story repeatedly. They accused their own legal team of being part of the conspiracy against them. The exposure of this person's true nature sent shockwaves through their entire community. People began questioning everything they thought they knew, examining past events through a new lens, recognizing manipulation tactics they had previously missed. It was like watching an entire group of people wake up from a shared nightmare. The spell that had been cast over them was broken, and they could finally see clearly. Some felt ashamed for being fooled. Others felt angry at themselves for not recognizing the signs sooner. But most felt grateful that the truth had finally emerged before even more damage could be done. They realized they had been living in a carefully constructed alternate reality where nothing was what it seemed, where conflicts were manufactured, where allies were turned against each other, where truth was whatever this person decided it should be on any given day. Support groups formed organically as victims found each other and shared their experiences. What started as individual trauma became collective healing as people realized they weren't alone in what they had endured. The isolation that had been deliberately manufactured began to dissolve as genuine connections replaced manipulated relationships. Patterns emerged that nobody had seen while trapped in the web of deception. This person had been running the same playbook on multiple people simultaneously. The same lies told to different audiences. The same emotional manipulation techniques applied across various relationships. The same financial schemes executed with different victims. Professional counselors were brought in to help people process what they had experienced. Terms like systematic manipulation, emotional abuse, and financial exploitation gave names to experiences that people had struggled to articulate. Understanding the psychology behind what had happened became an essential part of the healing process. Educational workshops were organized to help community members recognize similar tactics in the future. Warning signs that had been dismissed as personality quirks were reframed as red flags that deserved serious attention. People learned to trust their intuition when something felt wrong, even if they couldn't immediately explain why. The community that emerged from this revelation was stronger than before, bonded by shared experience, protected by hard-won wisdom, committed to never letting such systematic deception take root among them again. New protocols were established for vetting people in positions of trust. Background checks became standard for certain roles. References were verified more thoroughly. The naive trust that had been exploited was replaced by healthy skepticism, balanced with genuine openness to authentic connections. But perhaps most importantly, people learned to value their own instincts again. The gaslighting and reality distortion had trained many to doubt their own perceptions. Recovery meant reclaiming confidence in their ability to assess situations and people accurately. You never wanted to be anyone's downfall. You never set out to destroy someone's life. You simply refused to be destroyed by theirs. Your authentic presence in their web of lies was like sunlight hitting a vampire. Your genuine energy was so foreign to their constructed reality that it created cracks in their facade that eventually brought the whole structure down. They chose to make you their target because your light was so bright it hurt their eyes. They thought they could extinguish it or claim it for themselves. What they discovered instead was that some lights cannot be dimmed by human hands. The battle you fought wasn't just personal, it was archetypal. The eternal struggle between truth and deception, between authentic power and manipulative control, between light and shadow. You were carrying the banner for everyone who had ever been targeted by predatory manipulation. Your victory wasn't achieved through aggression or retaliation. It came through persistence in being yourself despite overwhelming pressure to become something else. Every day you chose authenticity over convenience was a victory. Every moment you trusted your intuition despite gaslighting was a triumph. The strength you displayed wasn't the kind that dominates others, it was the kind that refuses to be dominated. The power you wielded wasn't the kind that controls situations, it was the kind that cannot be controlled by external circumstances. You learned that real power lies not in the ability to manipulate others, but in the inability to be manipulated yourself, not in the capacity to create illusions, but in the gift of seeing through them, not in commanding respect through fear, but in earning it through integrity. Your victory created ripple effects that extended far beyond your personal situation. Other victims found their voices because you had found yours. Other predators were exposed because the spotlight had been turned on. Other communities became safer because one nest of deception had been cleared out. The healing you underwent became a template for others who had experienced similar manipulation. Your journey from confusion to clarity showed them the path forward. Your transformation from victim to victor gave them hope for their own recovery. Your victory wasn't in their destruction. Your victory was in remaining yourself despite everything they threw at you. In trusting your intuition when everyone told you that you were wrong. In maintaining your connection to something higher when they tried to drag you down to their level. You proved that authentic power cannot be faked, manipulated, or stolen. It can only be recognized and honored, or ignored and opposed. Those who oppose it inevitably destroy themselves in the process. The universe used their attack against you as an opportunity to upgrade your entire existence. What they intended for harm became the catalyst for unprecedented growth, deeper spiritual connection, and more authentic relationships than you had ever experienced before. With their toxic influence removed from your life and community, space opened up for genuine connections to flourish. Relationships based on truth rather than manipulation. Opportunities that had been blocked by their interference suddenly became available. The energy you had been unconsciously using to defend against their attacks was now free to flow toward your actual purpose. Projects that had been struggling suddenly found momentum. Doors that had been closed began to open. Creative endeavors that had felt blocked experienced breakthrough moments. People who had been kept away from you by lies and manipulation began to see you clearly for the first time. They recognized the light that others had tried so hard to obscure. Friendships formed organically without the artificial barriers that had been constructed to isolate you from potential allies. Your community, purified by the removal of such destructive influence, became a magnet for others seeking authentic connection. Your presence attracted people of similar vibration, while naturally repelling those with malicious intent. The quality of your social interactions improved dramatically as artificial drama disappeared. The universe had used this painful experience to upgrade your entire life. What seemed like an attack was actually a clearing. What felt like persecution was actually protection. What appeared to be destruction was actually divine reconstruction of your circumstances at a higher level. Some people are placed on this earth as tests for others. They arrive carrying gifts of discernment, catalysts for truth, agents of divine justice who expose darkness simply by being light. You are one of these people. Your very existence is a challenge to those who live in deception. Your authenticity threatens their carefully constructed facades. Your connection to higher truth disrupts their manipulation of lower realities. They cannot help but reveal themselves in your presence, like shadows that become visible only when light is shone upon them. This experience taught you something invaluable about your own nature. You learned that your intuition is never wrong, your energy is never powerless, your protection is never insufficient. Most importantly, you learned that divine justice is not just a concept but a living force that works through people like you to maintain balance in a world that often seems chaotic and unfair. You are not just a person living a life. You are an instrument of cosmic justice, a guardian of truth, a protector of the innocent, a revealer of deception. This is your calling. This is your gift. This is your responsibility and your power. The stalker who tried to bury you has instead buried themselves so deep that no explanation or trick will ever save them. The game they thought they were winning is over, and you weren't just a player. You were the house, and the house always wins.